Yes, sir. Thank you so much for getting on our call here from the West Coast bright and early. So, Trey, you and I spoke previously and wanted to have you share with our team all the great knowledge that you imparted not long ago with your team on leads. And I think you called it about the proper expectations of leads. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yes. So, Trey, if you'll tell us a little bit about you, where you're from, a little bit about your agency. We have a lot of new agents who might not be familiar with you. And so if you'd start with that and then just roll right into the leads. If we have questions, I will definitely butt in and ask.
All righty. Well, thank you for having me on the call, Paige. And, this group's probably one of my favorite groups in the whole company. Paige and Chantel have really been mentors for a long time for me, and I've always looked up to them. And FFL, Empowerment, and Continental, you guys are really blazing a trail. You're doing a great job. I mean, 53,000 submit for the week, or that's pretty phenomenal. So just keep pushing, just like Paige was saying. May is going to be a big month, and historically it's always been the biggest month for myself and my agency. And so I know that's true with a lot of the vice presidents across the country. They'll say the same thing. I guess I should just start off telling you a little bit about myself and how I got started with the company. So I started with Family First Life in October 2014. So it's been about 5 years now. The one thing I can tell you about my path with this is it has not been a straight line. It's been full of ups and downs, always getting better with the ups so the downs don't last as long. And there hasn't really been one giant breakthrough. There was no quantum leap for me. It was just a matter of being really consistent for a long period of time. And one of the things that I talk to people about is that this is really more about consistent activity over time and proper expectations. I think there's two things that will really mess you up in this business. It's having unrealistic expectations and misplaced dependencies. And so that's really the meat of what I want to talk about on this call, and I'm so grateful that Paige invited me on, because I've watched your guys' progress, and I am very impressed by it. And I feel like in my own story, having the right expectations has really been the key to allow me to even get this far, to survive. Because one of the things that I looked at when I got started was I would look at other people that seemed like they were going so much faster than me, and I had to learn how to calm my emotions on that and not compare myself, how to compete and not compare. And the story that I think about, so I'll start off by telling you guys this. So a few months ago, I was in the Boise airport, all right? And so I go into security, and I have some nutritional supplements in my bag. And the airport security says, all right, well, we need to screen those, right? So the lady pulls me over, and this is Boise, Idaho. It's not like a huge airport, Paige. This is probably a lot like Raleigh Airport, right? It's a little bit smaller. I don't know, is Raleigh's airport smaller? There's one of those airports that's small in North Carolina. So I go over to the security lady, and she has me at the little table, and she pulls out my nutritional supplements, and she's talking to me, and she pulls out like this swab thing, and she's swabbing these nutritional supplements. And she takes the thing, and she wipes around the top, and she puts a little scanner, and everything's good. And then she takes the next one, and then she wipes around the top, and she puts it in the scanner, and this alarm goes off. It actually makes a noise, like a siren. And she looks at me, and she looks at that alarm, and then she has this like walkie-talkie thing on her shoulder, right? So she looks down at her walkie-talkie, and she goes, "We got a code 14?" And then she has this earpiece on, so you could hear something in the earpiece, like loud, like somebody's yelling at her. And she goes, "Yeah, call Rodney." So I'm like, okay, this is interesting. She's going to call Rodney. So I'm standing there, and this TSA guy comes up behind me, And he's standing behind me, and I look back, and I'm like, why is the guy behind me? Like, I'm not going to run. What's going on? And then he's putting on rubber gloves. Thinking, oh, goodness gracious, I've seen this. This may not turn out right. What's he going to do? And this guy comes out from around the corner, and he has a shirt on that says Federal Agency. All right, he's a big buck guy. He looks like The Rock. And he comes up, and he talks to her, and he goes, Code 14? She goes, yeah, Code 14. And he looks at the thing, and he looks at me. And I go to touch my bag, and he goes, sir, don't touch your bag. Like, oh, boy, what has happened, And so then he comes over, and he puts both his hands on the table, and he leans forward. And he goes, where are you traveling to? And I told him. And he goes, do you have any idea why my very expensive, very accurate piece of equipment is saying you are covered in explosive material? And I go, yeah. And this is actually the truth. And he goes, do tell. And I go, well, because I'm thinking these supplements, I bought them online. So I'm thinking maybe they're full of cocaine or something. Like, I didn't know if I was going to get, like, in trouble or what was going to happen. So I go, yeah. And he goes, do tell. And I go, well, my wife has been on me about exercising and eating right. She's got me taking all these supplements. I've been working out like 6 days a week, so I must be burning calories. And I thought that was – and so the original lady, she starts laughing like uncontrollably, right? She's like, they don't know who I am or anything, and they had to like pull her away because she thought that was funny. He did not think that was funny, okay? So they took me to this back room. They searched all my stuff. They pat me down. They rubbed me down with gloves, all this stuff, I was like one step away from the literal strip search. And then they let me on the plane, So when I go to get on the plane, everybody's looking at me like, oh, gosh, they let that guy through, We're not sitting there. Like, I literally sit down and everybody moves. And what that story really was all about was that was just a segue into another story that I like to tell. And this does have to do with leads. I'm going to wrap this around. But the thing I want to talk to you about first is about the comparison thing, right? So that was all about, like, nutrition and, and then I have the story that I tell about vegetables, like a vegetable garden. And that's what a lot of people do is, like, I want you to pretend like you have a vegetable garden, right? And you're looking at your neighbor. He has a garden too. And every day you wake up and you go out there and you water your garden and you till the soil and do all that stuff. And you're looking over at the neighbor to see how fast his garden's growing. And as soon as you see some plants sprout, you start saying, gosh, what's going on with his garden? I wonder what he's doing different than me. Wow, I must be a loser because his garden's growing so much faster. And then you call your other neighbor. You say, hey, you see Tom's garden? Something's not right. He's just growing too quick. I mean, all he's doing is watering it. And every day you go out and he's watering his garden. He's tilling his soil. He's got a smile on his face. He has a good attitude. But your garden, you got this little crummy garden that's not working. And before you know it, instead of watering your garden, you're over there talking with your neighbor and gossiping about Tom's garden. And so this was supposed to turn out to be a whole better story about the airport. I was going to tie it all together. But the point is, a lot of times with Family First Life, what I found in the beginning was I was spending way too much time looking at everybody else's garden instead of just minding my own business and tending mine and watering my own plants. And what I found was if I could just stay focused on what's in front of me and minding my own business and not look to the left and not look to the right and not compare myself to everybody else, that I could stay consistent long enough to have success. And for newer agents, that's the hardest thing to teach. That's the hardest thing to get people to wrap their mind around because they get started in their first week, they don't write $10,000. Some people do. And, that's the big mystery of it all in a way, because sometimes that's the worst thing that could ever happen. You get you buy 10 leads, you sell 7 of them, and you write 10,000 the first week, and you think that's going to happen every week off of 10 leads. It doesn't. That's the wrong expectation. The realistic expectation when it comes to leads, the way I looked at it, was that in the beginning, I probably would not make money. That's really how I looked at it when I started, because my goal was just to get better. And I knew that anything you do more than once becomes easier, and if you do something long enough, a ratio will appear. So in the beginning, when you buy your first batch of leads, in my mind, if I broke even, that would be phenomenal. Now, what happened in the beginning with the first batch of leads, I don't know. I think I called aged leads for maybe the first 6 weeks, and I probably earned $12,000, but I really worked them. And I was following behind Andrew Taylor, who was a Hall of Fame producer, and I didn't think he left a lot on the table, but I went and made sales behind him, off leads that he'd already worked. And so in the beginning, I just made up in numbers what I lacked in skill. And that's how I got started. But my second mindset when it came to leads was, in the beginning, I may not make as much money. I may not even make any money. But when I did it again, I might break even, and eventually I'd start turning a profit, 5, 10, 15-fold, right? And that was the right expectation, because if I would have looked at it like, I'm just going to try this out, I'm going to buy these 20 leads, and if that doesn't work, I'm out. You have to have a long-term vision of what this actually is. And so having the proper expectation about what it actually took in the beginning, the amount of leads I would have to buy. The thing I tell people is, with leads, it's really not about the type of lead, it's about the lead budget. So a good, proper expectation when it comes to leads over time consistently is whatever you invest, you'll issue 5 times more. So if I buy $2,000 worth of EverQuote leads, I could expect to issue 10 no matter what. Now, can I get lucky and issue 30? Yes. But is that a predictable, reoccurring every single month that's going to happen for the rest of my life? No. It just means one week it was really good. And, yeah, there's weeks where you run 7 appointments, you close all 7 of them for $12,000. And then there's weeks where you run 7 appointments and nobody even shows up. And I don't know if that's too much. I mean, I don't want to discourage anybody, but the key to this whole thing is just consistent activity over time and understanding that the numbers always work out. They always do. Like people grossly overestimate what they can accomplish in a week, and they dramatically underestimate what they can accomplish in a year or 2. And consistency over time is a big factor in that. Like compounded effort, the idea that anything you do more than one time becomes easier, and you do get better. John Wetmore said something I thought was quite profound. I think it was probably the best training, and I know you were there a few years back at the national conference. Both you and Chantel were there, and he did this training where he talked about the numbers and how it was a numbers game. And he said, look, if you ran 1,000 appointments over the course of the year, you set yourself up to win. And he said the year that he went Hall of Fame, his goal was to run 1,000 appointments and just get those 25% of people that were going to say yes no matter what. And if his average sale was $80, which means his average AP was $1,000, if he just closed the 25% that always said yes, and I'm convinced there is a group of people that fill out these forms, that'll fill out like 100 of them over and over and over again, and every time you show up, they'll buy insurance from you. They'll live in a trailer. They won't have any money. They'll have all kinds of medical ailments, and they've got 13 other policies that they've kept in force, and they'll buy yours too. I don't know why it's like that, but it's like that. It happens. So 25% of the time, the people that we see will buy from anybody that shows up if you don't mess it up and you're honest, right? And so that's what Wetmore said he was going after. He said, I was just going after the 25% because I knew at the end of the year that I would issue $250,000. Well, by August of that year, he was well over $400,000 already. And you say to him, you say, well, how did that happen? He said, well, the thing that I didn't account for, and this is what I want everybody to understand, is I didn't account for momentum or my ability to get better. And that's the part of this business that we can't quantify. So when people say, hey, what's the best lead, Trey? What should I buy? Just buy anything. just start. Just move forward, because momentum and getting better, I can't factor that into the equation. But if you're consistent over time and you don't put all your eggs in one basket, here's the thing I learned from Mark Mead. He said the leads will cheat on you. He said sometimes this particular lead will be the best lead ever, and before you know it, like that one, it won't work for a little bit. And so you have to have another lead type. So for the people like what we do in our agency, for the people that are just running Facebook leads, the way we look at it is Facebook leads are phenomenal, but I don't think that it was really ever meant to be your only lead source forever. Like, you should have them, but you should have other lead sources too. And people say, well, I can't get mortgage protection because all the areas are locked out. So let me give you some ideas. And that was the other thing I thought too, is I thought all the big premiums came from mortgage protection. And that's not true. The way I want you to look at it, Matt Smith has I don't know if that's too much for me to say that. You guys probably don't think that at all. But there's definitely agents, since I've been around for a while, that when the final expense started becoming popular, they would say, well, I got lower premiums, you don't show up as much. Like, they would give all these excuses. And the way I looked at it with that is I said, look, if Matt Smith, who's the #1 all-time producer ever with Family First Life, if all he ran was final expense leads, do you not think he could not issue $400,000 off that? Of course he could, because he's already overcome the obstacles before to do it another way. So he would just do the same exact thing and get better over time and focus on it and learn how to overcome certain objections he may not get somewhere else. But over time, yeah, he could consistently produce enough to write 400. He'd figure out the lead flows. He'd figure it out, because it's not the leads. The leads are never the problem, ever. These are all people that requested information, and they're asking for insurance. So our job is just to show up and help them with it. And if we have a mind right about the lead, everything else will work out. And so two things. So Facebook leads, in my opinion, has never been designed so that we just run Facebook leads for the rest of our life. You need other lead types too. So the next, in my mind, the next proper lead type that you should look at is really getting on one of those direct mail programs with MailPro for the final expense leads. Because for me, that's been my most consistent, persistent lead type since I've started. If I want 10 a week, I can get 10 a week pretty consistently, like forever. And it's a direct mail piece. They're $30. You know, you show up, especially when you door knock, like you have something that they wrote on. You know, those work really well. And the other thing that I would have you guys look at that's worked really good for us is those retro leads with ARM. And they're retro mortgage protection. And I'll give you an example in California, and then I'll ask if you have any questions, because I want to be respectful of y'all's time, and I know I'm coming up on the end. But in California where I live, my particular county, let's say that every week there's about 2,000 people that are refinancing or buying a house in this county. It's the biggest county in the United States, though, by the way, geographically. And that's been going on now for since 2010. So whenever people get new mortgage protection leads, there's like a gazillion agents that are all mailing that same data, all right? And so what happens is you'll get to the house, and they filled out 17 forms, because all these different companies, which competitors, by the way, not just FFL agents mailing the same thing, these are different IMOs, they've sent this mortgage protection mailer back, different ones. And so you're competing with all these people, right? So with retro leads, what's fascinating about that, if you just go back a year or two, mail that data, which ARM does it, and they do it for like $430 per 1,000. You don't have to pay first-class mailing, because they're not trying to beat anybody to the mailbox. So it's $430 per 1,000. And what I'll do is I'll do 3,000 pieces at a time, and I'll do that. In fact, the #1 agent in our agency, Joe, that's all he runs. He just runs those. He just does mail drops. Every 3 weeks, he drops like 3,000 pieces with them. But think about this. If you go back a year, and we do a year to 6 years back with that program, that ARM retro lead mailer, you need to find out about it. Ask Sasha. She'll fill you in. Email her. Don't everybody call it once. leads@familyfirstlife.com. But let's say you go back a year or two, and there were 3,000 people that week a year ago or 2 years ago that refinanced or bought a new home, you could mail that data, all 3,000. 3 weeks later, you could do the next week. 3 weeks later, you could do the next week. You know, if in North Carolina, the counties are smaller, maybe you do 2, 3 counties, whatever. The point is, you could have 50 agents do the exact same thing, and you're in no worse position competitively than you would be just trying to get the new stuff. And so it's wide open. So for the people that say, hey, I don't have enough mortgage protection, that's how you get it. Now focus on Facebook, direct mail, all those different types. EverQuote, that's a really good way to get lots of people to talk to. But I would personally, what we've done is we've filtered in a lot of that retro mortgage mail with ARM. So was there, and I know I'm coming up at the end, and you guys are still trying to figure out the airport explosive material story and how I fit that in.
Yes, Ray. I hate to say. First of all, I've made a page of notes, but the burning question is what happened at the airport.
Okay, so one of these supplements had L-arginine in it, which is a nitrate. Okay, so that's what popped on this machine, and I knew that, because I know you guys can't tell now, but I was like a trainer for like 5 years. So that's before I got fat, and I drove around, actually just ate drive-through food while I was selling insurance. But I knew that's what it was, but I didn't want to say anything because then it makes it look like I knew what it was, and then it makes it look super suspicious. So I was comfortable because I knew that I wasn't going to go to jail. But the awkward thing about the search in the back room was the fellow that searched me, he was like 70, and they leave the door open because they don't want to close the door and search you because that'd be awkward. So he's just standing there, and he's like, "Man, it was like they drew straws." And he was like, it's my turn to search this dude, it was really, it was a trip. It was awkward. But
now,
what a great story.
Did you keep your supplement and take it with you?
Oh, yeah, I got to keep it. They let me keep it and everything. Okay. And that's the thing that messed everybody up because they're thinking, gosh, this guy fooled them, We're not getting on the plane.
Right. Well, they just let
us
on with a bomber. Okay, so
yeah.
I think, now that you've answered the burning question, I just want to point out a few things. I have starred here when you said it's more about the lead budget rather than the lead type. I think that was critically important.
Right.
Making up in numbers what you lack in skill in the beginning, and then let coming back to what you mentioned from John Wetmore at a couple conventions ago, the momentum and the improvement, they will come with that. And I think for a lot of our group, we have been a little bit too dependent on one or possibly two lead sources and not diversifying enough. So I think you made really good point on that as well. And these are great suggestions. The direct mail with the Mail Pro for final expense, the retro leads with ARM, that all sounds good. And I'm quite sure if I could zoom in and look at everybody who's on the call, I'm quite sure they are writing this stuff down because this week alone there's been a lot of dismay over Facebook leads coming in very, very slowly. And then lastly, out of my notes, I think one thing I want to point out is that you were like, the leads are never bad. It's our mindset about the lead source tends to be the biggest problem. Wouldn't you agree with that? Definitely.
And to drive that home, so I've worked in the same office as Andrew and Paul, we lived in the same neighborhood, and we would do different vendors, and they'd get the same lead from a different vendor, and we'd dial on the same day. And there would be times, no kidding, where I'd call to set the appointment, and they'd just flat out not be interested at all. Andrew would call, and they'd be angry. And then by the time Paul called them, they'd act like nobody ever called them, and they were happy to see him. And this would happen within like a 30-minute period. It was the strangest thing. And the other thing is I had this batch of direct mail pro leads that I thought I had worked to the point where it was impossible for anybody to ever sell anything out of it again. And I kid you not, there were 17 agents, we counted them, that made sales off that batch of leads after I worked them to slot. And nobody replaced anything. So it's just a matter of catching the people at the right time. And, it's all about timing.
Too. So your mindset about the lead is important, but do realize you can get somebody who literally may cuss you out. If you call them back a week from then, they're either not going to remember and they're in a better mood, or they will remember and they'll apologize for their bad behavior. I have had that happen as well. So, and you know what? I just kind of want to mention I had an older 2017 direct mail pro final expense lead, the exact kind you just referred to, Trey. And I was running in a certain area that was there, so I decided to call it again. I just acted as if it was brand new. These people had never answered. They finally answered. When I got there, I realized I had door knocked them multiple times, left stickers. They'd never called me. I went in and sold 2 policies. It was about a $2,000 premium total from a 2017 lead. And I even showed them the lead that said 2017, and they didn't call it out.
Exactly.
So I don't think it matters how old they are either. It's about the mindset. So, Trey, I tell you, this has been very informative, and I truly appreciate you taking your time, especially so early in the morning, to help us out. Chantel says thank you. It has been very helpful, and if we can ever do anything for you, please reach out. You know we're always happy to.
Well, I appreciate you guys. Thank you for having me.
Yes, sir. Thank you. All right, everybody, make it a great Friday and keep plugging on the weekend. Bye-bye.